I am Margaret Hill, 69 years old, a former art teacher from Ohio. My entire life has been spent standing beside easels, teaching students how to blend the colors of a sunset sky, and today I survive by photographing landscapes, selling each image to pay my electricity and water bills. The fundraising breakfast at my old school smelled of roasted coffee and freshly baked waffles, and I thought I would sit quietly in a corner. But unexpectedly, the principal called my name before the entire assembly, announcing that I had donated all my photography earnings to establish a scholarship fund. Applause erupted like a wave, wooden chairs creaking as everyone rose to their feet. My hands trembled as I lifted my coffee cup, and behind me, Melissa, my daughter-in-law, laughed stiffly. A smile so forced it was chilling, her eyes shooting daggers. Amid the celebration, I saw clearly. To them, I was just an asset waiting to be liquidated. That night, darkness in the living room wrapped around me like a silent vow. I would no longer remain silent. The morning of the fundraising breakfast began like any other Thursday in late September. I woke at 5:30, brewed a single cup of Earl Grey tea, and stood by the kitchen window watching the fog roll across the backyard, where my late husband Thomas once grew tomatoes. The house had been too quiet since he passed 3 years ago. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the hollow kind, the kind that made you notice every creak in the floorboards, every tick of the clock on the mantel. I had been invited to the breakfast by Principal Henderson, a woman in her early 50s, who had been one of my students back when I still taught full-time at Riverside High. She remembered me, she said over the phone, remembered how I stayed late after school to help her prepare her college portfolio. "Mrs. Hill," she had said warmly, "we would be honored if you could attend. We want to recognize the donors who've made our scholarship program possible." I hadn't expected recognition. I had donated the money quietly, transferred it from my modest photography account, with a note that simply read, "For students who dream in color but can't afford the canvas." But when I arrived that morning, dressed in my best navy blazer, the one I'd worn to Thomas's funeral and hadn't touched since, I felt out of place. The cafeteria had been transformed into something grand, round tables draped in white linen, centerpieces made of sunflowers and autumn leaves. Parents and teachers mingled, their laughter polished and practiced. I found a seat near the back, poured myself coffee from the carafe, and watched the room fill with people I no longer recognized. And then Principal Henderson stepped to the podium. "Before we begin," she said, adjusting the microphone, "I want to take a moment to honor someone very special. Many of you don't know this, but the scholarship fund that will send 3 students to art school this year was made possible by one woman. A woman who taught here for over 30 years, who gave everything she had to this community, and who continues to give even in retirement." My chest tightened. I hadn't expected this. "Margaret Hill," she continued, her voice thick with emotion, "sold every photograph she took this summer. Landscapes of our beautiful Ohio valleys, sunrises over Lake Erie, and donated every single cent. Mrs. Hill, would you please stand?" The room turned toward me. I felt my face flush hot, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Slowly, I stood. The applause started soft, then grew, rolling through the room like thunder. People I didn't know were clapping. People I used to teach were clapping. And for a moment, just a brief, fragile moment, I felt seen. But then I heard it. Behind me, a sharp exhale, a stifled scoff. I turned slightly and caught Melissa's face. My daughter-in-law sat 2 tables away, her lips pressed into a thin, trembling line. Her hands moved mechanically, clapping without conviction, her eyes locked on me with something cold and venomous. Beside her, My daughter Diana sat with her arms crossed, not clapping at all, just staring at her plate like the whole event was beneath her. The applause faded. I sat back down, my hands shaking so badly I had to hide them under the table. Principal Henderson continued speaking, but I didn't hear a word. All I could feel was Melissa's gaze burning into the back of my neck. I didn't always feel invisible. There was a time when I was the center of this family, the one who held everything together. When Diana and her younger brother Paul were small, I was the one who packed their lunches, drove them to soccer practice, stayed up late sewing costumes for school plays. Thomas worked long hours as an electrician, and I taught during the day, then tutored students at night to make ends meet. We didn't have much, but we had enough. We had love. We had laughter. We had a small brick house on Maple Street with a porch swing and a garden full of daffodils. When Diana graduated college and got her job at the bank, I was so proud. She was the first person in our family to have a salaried position with benefits, a 401k, a future that didn't depend on overtime or side gigs. She married young, to a man named Greg, who worked in IT and rarely spoke more than 3 words at family dinners. And then she had Melissa. No, wait, I'm getting it wrong. Greg left. Melissa came later. Diana remarried when she was 38. Her second husband, Ron, was a quiet man who sold insurance and played golf on Sundays. But it was Melissa, Ron's daughter from his first marriage, who changed everything. Melissa moved into Diana's life like a storm, loud and relentless and impossibly confident. She worked in public relations for a healthcare company, drove a white Audi, wore heels that clicked like gunshots on hardwood floors. She was 40 years old, but carried herself like someone who had conquered the world and was bored by it. And from the moment she entered our family, she looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. At first, it was small things. "Margaret," she said once, perched on my couch with a glass of Chardonnay, "have you thought about downsizing? This house is way too big for one person. You could sell it, move into one of those nice senior communities. You'd have people around, activities, meals prepared for you." I had smiled politely. "I'm not ready for that yet." She tilted her head. "Well, you're not getting any younger." Diana had laughed. Not a warm laugh, a dismissive one. It was Diana who brought it up first. We were sitting around my kitchen table one Sunday afternoon, the remains of a roast chicken dinner spread between us. Paul had come over with his wife and kids, and Diana and Melissa had arrived late, as usual, smelling of expensive perfume and impatience. "So, Mom," Diana said, pushing her plate aside, "I was talking to my financial advisor the other day. Did you know my projected pension is going to be around $12,000 a month?" I looked up from my coffee. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "What about you? What's your pension again?" I hesitated. 2,200. Melissa, who had been scrolling through her phone, looked up sharply. "A month?" "Yes." She set her phone down. "Margaret, that's barely enough to cover groceries and utilities. What are you going to do when you need care? When you can't drive anymore? When, God forbid, you fall and need someone to help you?" I felt my throat tighten. "I'll manage." "You can't manage on that," Diana said, her voice taking on a tone I didn't recognize, something between pity and irritation. "That's the reality, Mom. You gave up too much when we were kids. You should have gone back to school, gotten your master's, moved up the pay scale. But you didn't. And now—" She trailed off, but the words hung in the air like smoke. "And now you're a burden." Paul cleared his throat. "Di, come on. She'll be fine." Diana shot him a look. I'm just being realistic. Melissa leaned forward. Margaret, have you thought about putting the house in a trust? Or maybe transferring the deed now, before, you know, before things get complicated? I stared at her. Complicated? Health issues, memory problems. You know how it goes. I didn't respond. I just stood, cleared the plates, and walked to the kitchen sink. Behind me, I heard Melissa whisper something to Diana, and they both laughed softly. That night, alone in my bedroom, I cried for the first time in months. It happened on a Tuesday. I had gone out to photograph the sunrise over Lake Erie, something I did every week to keep my portfolio fresh. I sold my photos online through a small website Paul had helped me set up, and while the income was modest, it was mine. It gave me purpose. It gave me a reason to wake up early and drive through the morning mist, camera in hand, searching for light. When I returned home around 9 a.m., I saw my phone blinking with a missed call. I didn't recognize the number, so I ignored it. But then I noticed the voicemail notification. I pressed play. At first, there was silence. Then, muffled voices. It sounded like someone had called me by accident, left their phone on in their purse. And then I heard Melissa's voice, clear as glass. She thinks she's so special because they clapped for her. It's pathetic, honestly. She's just an old woman who gave away money she probably needs. Diana, I'm telling you, we need to act before she does something stupid. That house is worth $350,000, easy. If she gets sick, if she ends up in a nursing home, Medicaid will take everything. We need to get her to sign it over now, while she still can. Diana's voice replied, quieter but audible. I know. I just don't know how to bring it up without making her suspicious. You don't, Melissa said flatly. You just do it. Tell her it's for her own good. Tell her it's to protect her assets. She's old. She'll believe it. A pause. She really thought we were proud of her today, Melissa continued, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. It's almost sad. The voicemail ended. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, heart pounding so hard I thought I might collapse. They didn't see me as a mother. They saw me as an asset waiting to be liquidated. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, replaying the voicemail over and over again. Each time it hurt a little less and sharpened a little more. By morning, I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was furious. At 8 a.m., I called my bank. First National, this is Karen speaking. Hello, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. This is Margaret Hill. I need to speak to someone about my accounts. Of course, Mrs. Hill. What can I help you with? I want to place a security hold on all my accounts. No one should be able to access information about them except me. There was a pause. Has someone tried to access your accounts? I don't know, I said carefully, but I want to make sure no one can. Understood. I'll flag your accounts immediately. If anyone calls or comes in asking about them, we'll notify you right away. Thank you. I hung up. 2 days later, Karen called me back. Mrs. Hill, I wanted to let you know. Someone did try to access your account information yesterday. My stomach dropped. Who? A woman named Melissa. She said she was your daughter-in-law and that you had asked her to help you organize your finances. We asked for written authorization from you, and she said she'd bring it in. When we told her we'd need to verify it with you first, she left. I closed my eyes. Thank you for telling me. We've made a formal note in your file. If she tries again, we'll notify you immediately. I thanked her again and hung up. Then I opened my laptop and began to type. I wasn't just going to protect my money. I was going to protect my legacy. October came quietly, the way it always does in Ohio. Cool mornings that smelled of wood smoke, leaves turning copper and gold, the sky sharp and impossibly blue. I had been preparing for months, though I hadn't told anyone. Not Diana, not Paul, certainly not Melissa. I had submitted my work to the Cleveland Museum of Art for their annual community showcase, a small exhibition that featured local photographers and artists. It wasn't a prestigious event, no critics, no major press, but it mattered to me. I had entered 3 photographs, one of a barn at dawn, light pouring through broken slats like hope refusing to die, one of Lake Erie in winter, ice shards glittering like shattered glass, and one I called Echoes of Time, a portrait of an empty swing hanging from an oak tree in my backyard. The swing Thomas had built for Diana and Paul when they were small. I didn't expect to win anything. I just wanted to be part of something again, to feel like I still had value beyond my bank account and my last name. The notification email arrived on a Wednesday morning. Dear Ms. Hill, we are pleased to inform you that your photograph, Echoes of Time, has been selected as one of the featured works in this year's Community Voices exhibition. Additionally, your piece has been chosen for the museum's permanent digital archive and will be highlighted in an upcoming article in Cleveland Arts Monthly. I read it 3 times. Then I sat down and cried. Not sad tears, not angry tears. Tears of something I had almost forgotten how to feel. Pride. The exhibition opened on a Saturday in mid-October. I wore the same navy blazer I'd worn to the fundraising breakfast, paired with a simple grey skirt and the pearl earrings Thomas had given me on our 20th anniversary. I arrived early, nervous, my hands shaking as I signed in at the front desk. The gallery was larger than I expected. High ceilings and white walls, soft lighting that made every photograph look like it was glowing. My 3 images were displayed side by side in the third room, mounted on stark white matting with small brass plaques beneath them. Margaret Hill, Riverside, Ohio, Echoes of Time. I stood in front of them for a long time, just staring. Beautiful work. I turned. A young woman stood beside me, maybe 30 years old, holding a notepad and a pen. She had short dark hair, glasses, and the kind of face that looked like it asked good questions. Thank you, I said quietly. I'm Rachel Barnes. I write for Cleveland Arts Monthly. I'm doing a piece on the exhibition, and your work really stood out to me. Would you mind if I asked you a few questions? I hesitated. I'm not sure I'm very interesting. She smiled. I doubt that. We sat on a bench in the corner of the gallery, and she asked me about my process, about how I got into photography, about what Echoes of Time meant to me. I told her about Thomas, about the swing, about how I used to push Diana and Paul on it until they were dizzy with laughter. I told her about teaching art for 30 years, about retiring with a pension that barely covered my bills, about how I started selling my photographs to stay afloat. She took notes, nodding, her eyes soft with something that looked like respect. Can I ask you something? She said after a while. Of course. Do you feel like people see you? Like, really see you? I didn't answer right away. I thought about Melissa's voicemail, about Diana's pitying tone, about the way they looked at me like I was already gone. No, I said finally, not anymore. Rachel looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, well, after this article comes out, they will. The article was published 2 weeks later, both online and in print. Rachel had titled it, Echoes of Time, One Woman's Quiet Revolution Through the Lens. It was beautiful. She had written about my teaching career, about the scholarship fund, about how I had spent decades nurturing other people's creativity while setting aside my own. She quoted me extensively, describing me as A woman whose art is not an escape from life, but a refusal to let life erase her. The online version included a slideshow of my 3 photographs, along with a short video interview Rachel had filmed without telling me. In it, I talked about what it meant to be 69 and starting over, about how grief and resilience could coexist, about how I refused to become invisible just because society expected it. The article went viral, not in some massive celebrity way, but within the Ohio arts community, within teacher circles, within networks of women my age who saw themselves in my story. My inbox flooded with messages. Former students reached out. Strangers thanked me. Local galleries asked if I had more work to show. And then Diana called. "Mom," she said, her voice tight. "I just saw the article." "Oh," I said, stirring my tea. "What did you think?" A pause. "Why didn't you tell me you were being interviewed?" "You didn't ask." Another pause, sharper this time. "Melissa and I are getting a lot of questions. People keep tagging us on Facebook, asking if we're proud of you. It's awkward." I took a sip of tea. "Awkward how?" "Because it makes it look like we don't support you, like we're not involved." "You're not," I said simply. Silence. "Mom, that's not fair." "Isn't it?" She exhaled sharply. "Look, can we come over? I think we need to talk." "About what?" "About everything. About the article, about the house, about—" She stopped herself. "Just, can we come over on Sunday?" I thought about Melissa's voicemail, about the way they had tried to access my bank account, about the years I had spent being treated like a burden. "Fine," I said. "Sunday at 2?" I hung up before she could say anything else. I didn't wait until Sunday to act. On Thursday morning, I called Martin Shaw, a lawyer I had known since Thomas and I first bought the house 30 years ago. He was in his 70s now, semi-retired, but he still took on a few clients, mostly people he cared about. "Margaret," he said warmly when I arrived at his office. "It's been too long. What can I do for you?" I sat down across from him, hands folded in my lap. "I need to update my will." He raised an eyebrow. "Everything all right?" "No," I said honestly, "but it will be." I told him everything. The voicemail, the bank incident, the years of dismissive comments and thinly veiled contempt. I played him the recording Melissa had left, and I watched his face harden as he listened. When it ended, he set his pen down and looked at me. "Margaret," he said quietly, "this is elder financial abuse. You know that, right?" "I know." "You could press charges. You could file a restraining order. You could—" "I don't want to," I interrupted. "I don't want to drag this through the courts. I don't want the drama. I just want to make sure that when I'm gone, they don't get a single thing." He nodded slowly. "All right. Let's do it properly." Over the next 2 hours, we drafted a new will. Everything. The house, the small savings account, the modest investment portfolio Thomas had left me, would go to the Sunrise Foundation, a non-profit that supported elderly women who had been financially abused or abandoned by their families. I also set up a living trust, ensuring that even if I became incapacitated, Diana and Melissa would have no legal claim to my assets. Martin made 3 copies, one for his files, one for me, and one to be held by the Foundation's legal team. "Are you sure about this?" he asked as I signed the final page. I didn't hesitate. I've never been more sure of anything. Sunday arrived like a held breath. I spent the morning cleaning the house, not because it was dirty, but because I needed something to do with my hands. I baked a lemon cake, Diana's favorite when she was a child, and set the dining table with the good china, the kind we only used for holidays. At exactly 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. Diana came in first, her face carefully neutral, followed by Melissa, who was dressed in a cream cashmere sweater and dark jeans, her smile bright and false. "Mom," Diana said, kissing my cheek, "the house looks great." "Thank you." Melissa scanned the room like she was appraising it. "You've done so much with this place. It really is charming." "Thank you," I said again, my voice flat. We sat down at the table. I served the cake. We made small talk about the weather, about Diana's job, about Melissa's latest PR campaign. It was all surface, all performance, all lies. And then Diana cleared her throat. "So, Mum," she said, folding her hands, "we wanted to talk to you about something important." I set my fork down. "Go ahead." Melissa leaned forward. "We've been thinking about your future, about what happens if, God forbid, you get sick, or if you need care. And we think it would be a good idea to start planning now." "Planning how?" I asked. "Well," Diana said carefully, "we think it might make sense to transfer the house into a trust. That way, if anything happens, it's protected. You wouldn't have to worry about Medicaid taking it, or you could just give it to us now," Melissa interrupted, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "That way, you wouldn't have to deal with any of the paperwork. We could take care of everything." I looked at them both. These two women who had spent years trying to convince me I was worthless, and I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. "I see," I said quietly. Diana reached across the table. "Mum, we're just trying to help." I stood up. They both froze. I walked to the sideboard, opened the drawer, and pulled out a small digital recorder. I set it on the table between us. "What is that?" Melissa asked, her voice tight. I pressed play. Melissa's voice filled the room, sharp and clear. "She thinks she's so special because they clapped for her. It's pathetic, honestly. She's just an old woman who gave away money she probably needs." Diana's face went pale. "That house is worth $350,000. Easy. If she gets sick, if she ends up in a nursing home, Medicaid will take everything. We need to get her to sign it over now while she still can." Melissa's hands were shaking. "She really thought we were proud of her today. It's almost sad." I stopped the recording. The silence was deafening. "Mom," Diana started, her voice breaking. I held up a hand. "Let me be very clear. I know exactly what you think of me. I know you see me as a burden, as an obstacle, as something to be managed. And I want you to know that I have spent the last month making sure that when I die, neither of you will get a single penny." Melissa stood up, her face flushed with anger. "You can't do that. We're your family." "No," I said, my voice steady as stone. "Family doesn't plot. Family doesn't scheme. Family doesn't leave voicemails like that and think I'll never hear them." Diana was crying now, mascara streaking down her face. "Mum, please, we didn't mean—" "Yes," I interrupted. "You did. You meant every word, and now you'll have to live with it." I picked up the recorder, turned, and walked to the door. "I'd like you both to leave now." Melissa's voice was shrill. "This is insane. You're going to leave everything to strangers?" I turned back to her, and for the first time in years, I smiled. "No," I said. "I'm going to leave it to people who deserve it. People who were invisible, just like me. People who know what it's like to be erased by the ones who were supposed to love them." Diana stood, her hands trembling. "Mum, please. Goodbye, Diana." They left. The door closed, and I stood in the hallway, alone, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. The first few days after the dinner were quiet. Not the hollow, suffocating quiet I had known before, but a different kind. A quiet that felt intentional, chosen, earned. I woke each morning without dread, brewed my tea without checking my phone for messages I didn't want, and sat by the window watching the world turn gold and rust with autumn's slow hand. Diana tried calling. Twice the first day, 4 times the second. I let every call go to voicemail. I didn't listen to a single one. Melissa sent an email. Margaret, I think we all said things we didn't mean. Emotions were high. Let's talk this through like adults. You're upset, and I understand that. But cutting us out isn't going to solve anything. You're still our family. Please reconsider. I deleted it without responding. On the third day, Paul called. Mum? He said gently. Di told me what happened. Are you okay? I smiled into the phone. I'm fine, sweetheart. She said you played them a recording. I did. A pause. Did they really say those things? Yes. Another pause, longer this time. Jesus, Mum, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. I should have seen it. I should have said something. You couldn't have known, I said. They were very good at hiding it. He exhaled. What do you need? Can I do anything? No, I said. But thank you for asking. We talked for a while longer, about his kids, about his job, about nothing important and everything that mattered. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Paul hadn't asked me to forgive Diana. He hadn't made excuses. He had just asked if I was okay. That was love. A week after the dinner, I received a call from Eleanor Marsh, the director of the Sunrise Foundation. Mrs. Hill, she said warmly, Martin Shaw reached out to us about your estate plans. I wanted to call personally and thank you. This kind of gift. It changes lives. I'm glad, I said. Would you be willing to meet with me? I'd love to show you some of the work we do. I agreed. 2 days later, I drove to their offices in downtown Cleveland, a modest building tucked between a bakery and a law firm. Eleanor met me at the door, a woman in her mid-50s with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. She gave me a tour. The foundation ran support groups for elderly women who had been financially abused, offering legal aid, housing assistance, and counseling. They partnered with local shelters, helped women navigate Medicaid and Social Security, and provided emergency grants for those who had been left with nothing. We see it all the time, Eleanor said, as we sat in her office, tea in hand. Adult children who see their aging parents as inconveniences, who drain bank accounts, forge signatures, pressure them into signing over property. And the women, because it's almost always women, they blame themselves. They think they failed somehow. I looked down at my tea. I know that feeling. She nodded. But you didn't fail, Margaret. You survived, and now you're helping others do the same. She showed me a photo wall, dozens of faces, women of all ages, all backgrounds, all with stories like mine, women who had been invisible until someone saw them. When your estate transfers, Eleanor said, we'll be able to expand our housing program. We'll be able to help 12 more women a year find safe, stable homes. That's because of you. I felt tears prick my eyes. I just didn't want it to go to them. I know, she said gently, but it's going somewhere better. It's going to women who need it, who will use it to rebuild their lives. I nodded, unable to speak. Eleanor reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. You're not invisible, Margaret. Not to us. It happened in November, just after Thanksgiving. I had spent the holiday alone, by choice. Paul had invited me to his house, but I declined. I wasn't ready to sit at a table with Diana, to pretend everything was fine. Instead, I made myself a small turkey breast, watched old movies, and went to bed early. The next morning, I woke with a strange numbness in my left arm. At first, I thought I had slept on it wrong. I flexed my fingers, tried to shake it off. But the numbness spread, crawling up my shoulder into my jaw. My vision blurred at the edges. I knew what it was. I reached for my phone, fingers clumsy, and dialed 911. "Mom, can you tell me your symptoms?" "I think I'm having a stroke," I said, my voice slurring. "Stay on the line. Help is on the way." I don't remember much after that. Sirens, bright lights, a stretcher, voices asking me questions I couldn't answer. When I woke, I was in a hospital bed, an IV in my arm, monitors beeping softly around me. A nurse smiled down at me. "Welcome back, Mrs. Hill. You're at Cleveland Clinic. You had a minor stroke, but you're going to be okay." "How long have I been here?" "About 6 hours." I tried to sit up. "Did anyone—" "Your son Paul is in the waiting room. He's been here since we called him. And there are about a dozen people from something called the Autumn Lens Photography Club who've been asking about you non-stop." I felt my chest tighten. "Diana?" The nurse's face softened. "No one by that name has come?" I nodded. I wasn't surprised. Paul came in a few minutes later, his face pale, his eyes red. "Mom?" he said, his voice breaking. He pulled a chair up to my bed and took my hand. "Jesus, you scared the hell out of me." "I'm okay," I said. "You're not okay. You had a stroke." "A minor one." He laughed, but it sounded like a sob. "Don't do that. Don't minimize it." I squeezed his hand. "Did you call Diana?" He looked away. "I did. She said she'd come by later." Later never came. But the members of the Autumn Lens Photography Club did. They brought flowers, cards, a basket of fruit. My friend Lorraine, a woman my age who had lost her husband the same year I lost Thomas, sat beside my bed and held my hand without saying a word. "You gave us a scare, Maggie," said Henry, a retired engineer who always wore a bow tie to our meetings. "Don't you dare leave us." I smiled. "I'm not going anywhere." They stayed for hours, taking turns sitting with me, telling stories, making me laugh until my ribs hurt. And when visiting hours ended and they finally left, I realized something. These people, strangers who had become friends through a shared love of photography, these people had shown up. Diana hadn't. Melissa hadn't. But these people, who owed me nothing, had come. Before the stroke, I had written a letter. I hadn't planned to. It just happened one evening in late October, sitting at my kitchen table, the house quiet around me. I pulled out a sheet of stationery, cream-coloured, the kind Thomas and I used to use for thank you notes, and I began to write. "Dear Emily, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you've found this letter tucked inside the photo album I kept on the top shelf of the hall closet. I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything while I was still here. Some truths are easier written than spoken. By now, you've probably heard the story your mother and grandmother will tell about me. They'll say I was difficult, stubborn, ungrateful. They'll say I cut them out for no reason, that I was cruel in my old age. Maybe they'll even believe it. But I want you to know the truth. I was not cruel. I was not ungrateful. I simply refused to let people who saw me as a burden treat me like one. I refused to hand over the life I built just because they wanted it. And I refused to be invisible. Your great-grandmother once told me that the hardest thing about getting old isn't the aches or the loneliness. It's the way people stop seeing you. They look past you, through you, like you're already a ghost. And for a long time, I let them. But then I decided I didn't want to be a ghost. I wanted to be remembered as someone who stood up, who chose justice over peace, who loved fiercely even when that love wasn't returned. I hope you never have to make the choice I made. But if you do, I hope you remember this. Your voice matters. Your dignity matters. And you are never, ever too old to fight for yourself. I love you, sweet girl. Always, Grandma Margaret. I sealed the letter in an envelope, tucked it into the album between photos of Diana and Paul as children, and placed the album back on the shelf. It was my insurance policy. My voice. Preserved. On a rainy Sunday afternoon in December, Paul brought his son Leo, my grandson, 10 years old, curious and kind, to visit me. I was still recovering from the stroke, moving slower, my left hand still weak. But I was home. Leo had brought a chessboard. "Grandma, will you teach me?" he asked, setting it up on the coffee table. I smiled. I'd love to. We played for hours. I taught him how each piece moved, how to think 3 steps ahead, how to sacrifice a pawn to protect the queen. He lost every game, but he never got frustrated. He just kept asking questions. "Grandma," he said after his 5th loss, "how do you always know what I'm going to do?" I moved my rook into position. "Because I've played a lot of games, sweetheart, and I've learned that people show you who they are through their moves. You just have to pay attention." He frowned at the board. "Is that why you don't talk to Grandma Diana anymore?" I looked up, surprised. "Did she tell you that?" He nodded. "She said you were mad at her, but she wouldn't tell me why." I studied his face. This boy who had his great-grandfather's eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. "Leo," I said carefully, "sometimes people make moves in life that hurt other people. And when that happens, you have a choice. You can pretend it didn't happen and keep playing the same game, or you can walk away and find a better game." "Did Grandma Diana hurt you?" "Yes." "Are you going to forgive her?" I thought about that for a long time. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "Forgiveness isn't something you owe people. It's something you give when you're ready, if you're ever ready." He nodded slowly, processing. Then he moved his bishop. Checkmate. I looked down at the board, stunned. He'd beaten me. I started to laugh, and he grinned, proud and shy all at once. "You're learning," I said. "So are you, Grandma." The 4th of July came with heat and humidity, the kind that made the air feel thick, hard to breathe. But I didn't care. I had been invited to a party by the Autumn Lens Photography Club, a rooftop gathering in downtown Cleveland, where we'd watch the fireworks over Lake Erie. I almost didn't go. My energy still wasn't what it used to be, and crowds made me tired. But Lorraine called and said, "Maggie, if you don't come, I'm dragging you there myself." So I went. The rooftop was strung with lights, tables full of food, people I had come to love gathered in small clusters, laughing and talking. I found a quiet corner and watched the sky darken, watched the first stars appear. And then the fireworks started. Explosions of gold and red and blue, bursting across the sky like something breaking open, like something being born. The crowd gasped and cheered, and I stood there, hands on the railing, feeling the vibrations in my chest. I thought about Thomas, about the life we had built, about the ways I had tried to hold on to it even after he was gone. I thought about Diana and Melissa, about the years I had spent believing I was the problem. I thought about the scholarship fund, the photography exhibit, the letter I had hidden for Emily, and I realized I wasn't holding on anymore. I was letting go, not in defeat, in release. A firework exploded above me, gold sparks raining down like a benediction, and I whispered into the noise, "I'm free." 2 weeks after the fireworks, Diana called. I saw her name on the screen and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a faint curiosity. I answered, "Mom." "Diana?" A pause. "How are you?" "I'm well. You?" Another pause, heavier. I'm I'm not great, actually. Melissa and we've been talking. About what happened. About what we said. I see. And we realize we made a mistake, a big one, and we want to apologize. Waited. We were scared, she continued, her voice cracking. We were scared of losing you, of watching you get sick, of not being able to help. And we handled it so badly. We were selfish and cruel and… Her voice broke completely. "Mum, I'm so sorry." I closed my eyes. "Thank you for saying that. Can we… can we fix this? Can we start over?" I thought about the voicemail, about the bank, about the dinner, about the stroke they didn't come to. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't shut me out." "I'm not shutting you out, Diana. I'm protecting myself, the way I should have a long time ago." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not ready to pretend this didn't happen. It means I need time. And it means that if we're going to rebuild, it has to be on my terms, not yours." Silence. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay." We hung up. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt clear. In early September, the Sunrise Foundation held a dedication ceremony for their new housing facility, a converted Victorian house on the east side of Cleveland, painted pale yellow with white trim, flower boxes under every window. Eleanor called me a week before. "Margaret, we'd like you to be there. We'd like to name the house after you." "After me?" "The Margaret Hill House. It feels right." I didn't know what to say. "Eleanor, you gave these women a home, Margaret. Let us give you the recognition you deserve." The ceremony was small, intimate. 12 women, all residents of the new house, stood on the front steps. Eleanor gave a short speech about the importance of safe housing, about the dignity every person deserves, about the power of one woman's choice to create a legacy. And then she invited me to speak. I stood at the podium, hands shaking, and looked out at the faces before me. Women who had survived abuse, abandonment, cruelty. Women who had been invisible until someone saw them. "I'm not a hero," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "I'm just a woman who got tired of being erased. And I want you to know, every single one of you, that you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are seen. You are valued. And you matter." The applause was soft but sustained. And when I stepped down, 3 of the residents came forward and hugged me, tears in their eyes. "Thank you," one of them whispered. "Thank you for giving us a place to call home." I held her and thought, this is what legacy looks like. It's been 2 years since the dinner. 2 years since I played that voicemail. Since I changed my will. Since I chose myself. Diana and I speak now, though not often. We meet for coffee once a month, neutral ground, careful conversations. She's trying. I can see that. But trust, once broken, doesn't mend quickly. Maybe it never fully does. Melissa and I don't speak at all. I've made peace with that. Paul visits every Sunday, often with Leo, who is 12 now and still asks me to play chess. He beats me more often than not these days. I couldn't be prouder. The Autumn Lens Photography Club remains my anchor. We meet every Wednesday, rain or shine, and wander through parks and neighborhoods with our cameras, searching for light. Lorraine still makes me laugh until my sides ache. Henry still wears his bow ties. And I still photograph sunrises, because hope, I've learned, arrives early. I think about Thomas sometimes, about what he would say if he could see me now. I think he'd be proud. I think he'd tell me I was always stronger than I believed. And I think he'd be right. Getting old doesn't mean getting quiet. It doesn't mean letting people decide your worth based on your pension, your wrinkles, your usefulness to them. I spent years believing that being a good mother, a good woman, meant sacrificing endlessly, meant accepting whatever scraps of love were thrown my way. I believed that silence was strength, that endurance was virtue. I was wrong. Strength is knowing when to speak. Virtue is knowing when to walk away. I am 69 years old, and I am not invisible. I am not a burden. I am not a line item on someone's inheritance wish list. I am Margaret Hill, and I chose myself. I chose justice. I chose a legacy that mattered. And if my story teaches you anything, let it be this. You are never too old to start over. You are never too old to demand respect. And you are never, ever too old to refuse to disappear. If you've ever been dismissed because of your age, if you've ever been told you're too old to matter, too old to dream, too old to fight back, I see you. If you've ever been treated like a burden by the people who were supposed to love you most, I believe you. And if you've ever felt invisible, erased, forgotten, know this. You are not alone. Tell your story. Speak your truth. Refuse to be silenced. Because the world needs to hear from those of us who've lived long enough to know what really matters, who've survived long enough to know that dignity isn't negotiable, who've fought long enough to know that justice, even when it comes late, is still justice. I'm Margaret Hill, and I didn't disappear. Neither should you.